Welcome, race fans, to another episode of Photo Finish. I'm your host, Steve-O. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby. But before we get into that, I want to remind you that we are sponsored by Spinnable Sports. Go to spinnablesports.com for all your sports news and notes every day. As a reminder, I want you to go subscribe to this podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. If you're listening on YouTube, or watching on YouTube, we appreciate you. Give us a like and share the show around to your friends and family. As I mentioned, Spinnable Sports is where you can find all of past episodes of Photo Finish. And I want to encourage you to go listen to our sister show, the Rational Confidence Podcast. I appreciate Haps and Fresh for having me on for their draft preview edition. We had a lot of fun doing a mock draft ahead of the NFL draft just a couple of weeks ago. And so go check out their show as well. Before we get into it, got a couple of news and notes for you before we talk about the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby from Louisville, Kentucky. If you've been listening to the show for any length of time, we've been following this Bob Baffert suspension. This is his third and should be final year of being suspended from racing horses at Churchill Downs. Originally, Churchill Downs imposed a 2-year ban on Bob Baffert. And so he thought he was going to be able to run horses this year, and they've decided to extend that ban for another year. There's some litigation going on. He had a horse, Muth, that would have been probably the Derby favorite, if not one of the favorites. Muth's owner filed a lawsuit to try and get him in the Kentucky Derby, and a judge denied the request for injunction. So Baffert's suspension is upheld, and no Baffert horses, hopefully for the last year of that third-year suspension. The weather for Friday and Saturday in Louisville, Kentucky looks a little dicey. Friday, we've got rain in the forecast in the morning, thunderstorms possibly in the afternoon. A lot of good races both Friday and Saturday, so we'll keep an eye on the weather. I've kind of handicapped these races without any weather concerns, but I'm probably going to have to go back and look at the races on Friday. I'm afraid we might have some of the turf races pulled off the turf. Probably going to have a fair amount of scratches, so I have to just keep an eye on the weather. Saturday looks better as of right now. Should be fine by the time the Kentucky Derby rolls around. I think post time for the Derby's at almost 7 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. So we'll keep an eye on the weather. But we're going to go ahead and get into the Friday card. I've got the racing form pulled up. Again, I use time forms, racing forms, just form that I'm comfortable with. I encourage everybody to go find a form that you're comfortable with. Equibase has forms. A lot of people use the forms from Daily Racing Form with buyer speeds, which you'll hear a lot of the experts on TV talk about buyer speeds. The buyer speeds can be different than the speeds we're looking at on this time form, but it's a similar rating system. You know, buyers got their own way of rating horses, time forms got theirs, but at the end of the day, the speed figures should be consistent from one form to the next. And so once you learn how to read a racing form, and if you need help doing that, we've got you covered. Go back and listen to one of our first episodes of Photo Finish, and I'll walk you through how to read a racing form. But we're going to go ahead and get started looking at Kentucky Oaks Day. So this is Friday afternoon. The first race we're going to look at is race 5 on Friday. This is a grade 1 race going off on the dirt at 1 mile and a 1/16. You'll see I have already broken down the card. You'll see my notes as we go along, and I'll tell you who I like at the end of this. I've already thrown a couple of horses out here. There are some really good horses in this race. Frosty O'Toole has run in some big races before, ran in the Grade 1 Acorn back last year, but this horse is just not in good form right now. I don't like her a whole lot in this race. I've already scratched her too. Taxed, horse that again is running some pretty big races. She won the Black Eyed Susan last year, ran in the Grade 1 Alabama at Saratoga at the end of the year, ran in the Grade 1 Apple Blossom back at Oklahoma Park just a couple weeks ago, but just didn't have a great showing. I don't think this horse is in best form. So I've scratched off the 2. 3 is a possibility. I don't mind 3's form. Finished third at the Apple Blossom a couple weeks ago to a Deer Manor Flying Connection. Horse I don't mind. But the horse I've got on top is actually the 4, Idiomatic. This is a Brad Cox Florent Giroux horse. As you can see, 12 starts, 9 wins, a second, and 2/3. So this horse has never not hit the board and has won her last, going back, it's won or finished second her last, 9 out of the last 10 races, including the last race, which was the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Distaff back in Santa Anita in November, which is one of the biggest races of the year, where she ran a 124. Again, that's the time form number, but that's a massive number. Has not raced this year. I always like to see horses have at least one race under the belt in a new year, but this horse has just been so good for the past year. I'm using the 4 on top in this race. I do like the 5 as well, pretty mischievous. This Brendan Walsh, Tyler G horse finished second last time out on a sloppy track at Parks in September. Before that, won the Grade 1 test, Grade 1 Alcorn, and won the Kentucky Oaks last year. So this is a horse that's got a good pedigree, some pretty good numbers. It's a horse that I'm definitely going to be using underneath, beyond Idiomatic. So I like the 5. 6 is a horse I don't mind. I'm probably not going to use Zygora at 3-1 on the morning line. We'll see what her odds are closer to post time, but as you know, you can't play them all. I'm probably going to toss the 6 just because I want to find some value elsewhere. Julian Leparoux gets the mount. She's won her last 3 races. Again, no races this year. Darth Vader is the 7 horse here. 12-1 on the morning line. We'll see where her odds go closer to post time. She ran in the Kentucky Oaks last year, finished 5th. At the time, though, had ran her best speed number to date at a 111. Then she ran in the Grade 1 Acorn and the Grade 1 test. Didn't win either of those races, but put up some pretty good speed numbers. Gets a great jockey on board, John Velasquez. George Weaver's the trainer. I think you can see after the Kentucky Oaks, the owners sent her to George Weaver. Just a really good trainer, great jockey on board here. So I'm going to use the 7 underneath. I'm going to have going back to the top here, you can see I like the 4 on top, as I said, Idiomatic to win. I'll probably play some version of a 4 over 5-7, over 5-7, exact trifecta combinations. And, it just depends on what the odds are closer to post time to try and find some value. We're going to go ahead and just skip on down to race 6. This is a race I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but I'm going to give you a win bet to consider. If I can find my race 6 on my form here. This is the Grade 3 Unbridled, 5.5 furlongs on the turf. This is no comparison if you look at the other horses in the race. Again, we're not going to go through every horse in this race, but I want to show the 2 horse here. Ova charged 7-2 on the morning line. This horse ran a 134 last time out, just 40 days ago at Fairgrounds in a turf stakes race. This horse has won her last 4 races, won 2 on dirt, won 2 on turf, all stakes races. Florent Giroux gets the mount, but that 134 number is just a massive number. Last time out, 5.5 furlongs on the turf in Fairgrounds, 5.5 furlongs on the turf here in this race. So I will be soloing the 2 in some of my multi-race bets. And if she's at 7-2, closer to post time, I will have a fairly large win bet on the 2. Let's go and look at, skip down the card a little bit. We're going to go all the way to race number 9 on Friday and break down that race a little bit. This is the Grade 2 8 bells, 7 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-old horses. And so you'll see here a lot of horses in this race tried to qualify for the Kentucky Derby. You'll see prep races that they tried to run and win to get in the Kentucky Derby. Couldn't quite make it, so a lot of horses are in this 8 Bells race. We're going to skip on down to another race on Friday. Race number 9 on the card is the Grade 2 8 Bells. It's going to be ran on the dirt track at 7 furlongs. Show you a couple of horses I like in this race. Let's start with the 1 Impel. This is a Brad Cox Laurent Giroux horse. Lightly raced, only 3 races under her belt, but did win the Grade 1 Ashland in Keeneland back in April 5th. Ran a 115, or excuse me, she did not win that race, but ran a 115, which is her best number to date. Won her 2 previous races before that. This horse is improving in form each time out, something I like to see. I'm going to use the 1 here. 2, not bad speed numbers for her 2 starts, but I just don't think she has enough to compete with other horses in this race. 3 is interesting, Lady Moscato. D. Wade and Lucas is your trainer. Keith Asmussen's the jockey. 10 starts, so a 3-year-old with 10 starts already under her belt is pretty unheard of. Lucas likes to run his horses, get them started early and keep them going. 10 starts, nothing really impresses me until her last 2 races, where she won. She won at Oaklawn Park both times in March and then again in April with Keith Asmussen on board. This is quite a jump in class for her, going from a $140,000 allowance race to a graded stakes race. But 15 to 1 on the morning line, I'm probably going to use some of the 3 underneath. Probably don't like the 3 to win, but she's getting faster each time out and has won her last 2. So maybe D. Wayne's found something here, and I like Lady Moscato to use underneath to kind of boost up some exotics. The 4 trial, nothing there other than Joel Rosario's on board. You get a big jockey uplift for her, but I don't see anything in her numbers that would indicate that she's going to contend in this race. The 5 I've marked through as well. Don't see anything out of the 5 that I like. The 6 Starnia. She like the other horse has 7 starts under her belt, 2 wins, 2 seconds, including her last race at Oaklawn Park in March, where she ran a 112. That a 112 may be good enough to win this race. So, she's proven she's got the speed. Looks like she wants to be near the front. Can she get to the front and stay there? I don't know. I think I'm probably going to use the 6 underneath just in case. The 7, horse I like a lot. This Brad Cox, Flavian Pratt horse, Denim and Pearls. 5 starts, 3 wins, and 2 seconds, including the Grade 2 dirt race at Keeneland just a few weeks ago, April 7th, where she ran a 111, won by 9, and a quarter lengths just ran going away. So I like the 7 a lot. The 8 Do-Gooder, just didn't see a whole lot there. She does have 1 win and 3 starts, just an $89,000 maiden race on a sloppy track, which, Friday could be sloppy. So that's something to keep an eye on. I did scratch the 8, but if the weather gets really bad and we have a sloppy track, she has won on a sloppy track, so I would probably consider using the 8. 9, Alina's Forte, Jose Ortiz on board, ran in the Grade 1 Ashland at Keeneland just a few weeks ago. But that race was at a mile and 16th, where she did not fare as well. I think a shorter distance is probably more suits her style. If you take out the last race, she's been first or second in both of her races. I just don't think she's quite got the speed. I don't mind her per se, but again, you can't play them all. There's some horses I like better underneath. The 10, even though she's got Iran on board, the 10 is just doesn't have the numbers to hit the board in this race, in my opinion. 11, My Main Squeeze. Mike Maker is your trainer. Louis Saez is your jockey. If you take out her last start at Oaklawn Park, where she kind of acted up in the gate, finished 8th. Before that, she had 3 wins in a row. She was steadily improving on her speed numbers. She's got 4 wins overall. I don't mind the 11 if she can calm down and not act up in the gate and has a good trip. The 11 could contend. We'll be using the 11 underneath. The 12 are Harper Rose, Saffy Joseph, Tyler G. Connection here. Again, a horse I don't mind. 12 to 1 on the morning line's good price for her. She's got 6 starts, 4 wins, 2 seconds. The quality of the races just haven't been as good. She did win the Grade 3 Forward Gal at Gulfstream Park back in February. Her numbers are good. I don't mind using the 12 underneath as well, or some combination of that. So how I'm playing this race is the 1 and the 7 up top, probably a 1-7 exacta box, and then a 1-7 over 11, 6, 3, 12, some combination. I'll have to narrow it down, have to see what the weather looks like. If the weather, like I said, if the weather gets kind of nasty, then I may look at using the 8, who's won before on a sloppy track. Let's look at Grade 2 Edgewood real quick. It's 1 mile and 16th on turf. Only one horse I want to point out here and just go ahead and mention while we're kind of talking about some other races earlier in the weekend is the 3 scalable. Todd Pletcher is your trainer, but LaFranchi Dettori. Frankie is one of the just best jockeys. He's 50-something years old. He's primarily ridden in Europe and overseas. He has come to the United States this year. He said this is his last year riding. He's been out west a good bit. He's riding for Bob Baffert some. Todd Pletcher's using him here. You'll see Charlie Appleby's using him this weekend. He's a great jockey on turf. Depending on who you listen to, he can win on any surface, but I think primarily he's best on turf. Just throw in this anecdote while we're kind of talking about Frankie. I went to Keeneland a couple weeks ago. Was at the track live for the Grade 3 Lexington Stakes, and Frankie was 25 to 1 on one of the turf races. And I told a couple people sitting around us, was like, this is the kind of race that Frankie will win out of nowhere. Nobody's betting on him. 25 to 1. I think his odds were like 40 to 1 at one point, and then I put some money on him. Some other people put some money on him, and came down 25 to 1. But won the race, and just was just a great jockey on turf. So 15-1 on the morning line. We'll see what Scalable does, but this is definitely one where I will probably have a win bet on the 3 just because of Frankie. Let's go ahead and move to race 11 on Friday. Of course, when I'm talking about Frankie and turf races and Friday, we got to look at the weather. I mean, depending on what the weather's like, that could have an effect on a lot of these races, and they may even pull some off the turf to save the turf trap for Saturday. So just something to keep an eye on. But let's go ahead and break down the Kentucky Oaks, which is the biggest race on Friday. It is for fillies and for fillies, 3-year-old fillies. It's being ran at 1 mile and 1/8 on the dirt track. When I was looking at this race, trying to figure out, how to pick a winner, there's just a lot of great quality horses in this race. I'm hoping it's a really good betting race. I don't know that we're going to have an overwhelming favorite. There wasn't any one horse that stuck out to me when I was kind of going through the card. So let's take a look at a few horses. I've kind of already thrown out the one. You can see on the racing form here, kind of 113 is the kind of average speed figure in this race. So, I don't always just throw out a horse if they've never hit that speed figure before, but I've thrown out one. I just don't see anything from her. The 2 Jin, 30 to 1 on the morning line, I thought was a little high for her morning line odds. Brad Cox, Florent Giroux are your connections. This horse has steadily improved. every time out, getting better, getting better. The only reason I tossed her here is because I just don't. She hasn't improved that much in her last 3 starts. I don't think that she can hit the board running a 102. She'd have to significantly improve, which is possible, but she'd have to significantly improve for me to consider using the 2. The 3 I've also already tossed, even though she won her last race, which was the grade 3. Ran a 110 number, which is a good number. 110, 110, 111. She's got good numbers lately, but I think she is probably kind of maxed out at that 110, 111 speed number, and I just don't think that's enough to get this race won. And again, you can't play them all. There's a lot of horses I like in this race better than the 3. Let's look at the 4, Regulatory Risk. Chad Brown, Jose Ortiz are your connections here. Another horse that's been improving the last few times out, has won a race on a muddy track, so something to keep an eye on as well. Depending on the weather, might play a win bet on the 4 if the track conditions are not good on Friday, which are certainly possible. Also ran on the sloppy track after that, didn't do as well at Aqueduct earlier this year on a sloppy track, and then came back and ran pretty well on a fast track at 1 1/8. Finished second to another horse in this race. So don't hate the 2, but again, can't play them all. So I'm probably not going to use the 4 unless the weather gets bad, and then I might consider her. Let's look at the 5, Torpedo Anna. Ken McPeak, Brian Hernandez Jr. jockey. 4 starts, 3 wins. Pretty good number the last time out. Looks to be improving. Won the grade 2 fantasy at Oaklawn. Before that, as a 2-year-old, won a race here at Churchill Downs. Finished second and then won her race before that at Churchill. So she's got a win on this track. I like the 5 underneath. We'll be using some of her in this race. The 6, Lemon Muffin, a D. Wayne Lucas horse. Just don't see a lot. As we talked about earlier, Lucas likes to run his horses. 7 starts, only 1 win, 4 seconds, but I just don't see enough from her in the form to justify using her. 7, Fiona's Magic. Luis Saez on board. Just didn't have a good start last time out at Gulfstream in the Gulfstream Parks Oaks. Did win grade 2 race and finished second in grade 3 before that, both at Gulfstream Park. So I don't mind that, but again, her numbers just aren't good enough for me to consider using her. The 8, Tarifa, Brad Cox, Flavion Pratt. She's won her last 3, appears to be improving the speed numbers. Won the grade 2 Rachel on a sloppy track. This is a horse that I would look to use if the weather gets bad. I'm going to use the 8 anyway. I think I'm going to use her underneath. There's a couple of other horses coming up I like a little bit better, but if the weather gets bad, this could be my pick to win. I'm going to keep an eye on track conditions and possibly look at Tarifa. The 9, Everland, her top numbers are 101. Cedillo gets the mount. It was ridden her a couple times, including a win, but it was on synthetic surface her last time out. Just don't see enough here to use her. The 10 is interesting. Into Champagne, 30-1 in the morning line. Julian Leperoux's on board. She had 2 wins, and then kind of increased in class. Went from $100,000 stakes race to a grade 2, where she finished second. Ran again in a grade 2 at the Gulfstream Park Oaks back in March. Finished 3rd there, but her numbers are improving. This is a horse that I would probably use underneath to try and boost my exotics. She's steadily improving, has some experience in running the slop where she won, although it was at 6 furlongs, so a little bit lesser distance. But lightly raced, just her 5th start. I would probably consider using the 10 underneath. One of the horses I like up top is the 11 Ways and Means. Chad Brown, Tyler Gaffalione is your jockey. This horse won her first race and has steadily improved each time out. 2 seconds after that, but 113 last time out. I think this horse is just still getting better. So I don't think we've seen her best race yet. She finished second in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, where several horses in this field have already raced. And so I think the 11's definitely one that I like to use up top. The horse that did win that Gulfstream Park Oaks is the 12 Power Squeeze, ran a 112. That was by far her best number. She hadn't kind of shown anything near that her last race. So, I don't know that I tossed the 12, but I'd like to see some more consistency in her numbers. They're just kind of all over the board. 75, 102, 91, 112. There's no consistency there. So that makes me concerned that her last race was just kind of a one-off. 13, just FYI, Bill Mott, Junior Alvarado. This horse is 3 for 4, including a second her last time out in the Grade 1 Ashland on April 5th at Keeneland. She lost to Leslie's Rose, which is another horse in this race we'll talk about in just a second. But I think the 13, the 13, just FYI, I think you've got to use her underneath. The 14, Leslie's Rose, is another horse I like up top. Just killed it in the Ashland. Won it by 3 lengths going away. Ran a 116. Todd Pletcher's your trainer. Irad Ortiz is your jockey. This is a horse that I think you have to consider along with 11 to win this race. Another horse I don't mind underneath at 15-1 to boost up your exotics is the 15, Our Pretty Woman. Steve Asmussen's your trainer. Joel Rosario is your jockey. Finished second at the Fairground Oaks back in March, but ran a 110. Tarifa was your winner of that race. Lightly raced horse, but is improving each time out, including 2 wins before that. Both of her wins were on a sloppy track. So again, this is another horse. If the weather gets bad, I may be looking at a win bet on the 15, depending on the odds. 16, Candied, another Pletcher horse. Don't hate it. Her numbers are improving, but again, you can't use them all. And she got beat by several other horses in this race last time out. So I just don't think she's shown us that she can compete with the other horses in this race. And so I like the 14 and 11 in this race to use on top. Some combination of the 5 of the 10. If the weather just really breaks down, I'm going to look at the 4, the 8, and the 15. So those are several of the horses I like for the Kentucky Oaks on Friday.